Oh, so I've been meaning to make a video for a little bit here. I've been seeing a lot of people complaining about kind of the state of PlayStation right now, and I just want to talk about that a little bit, give my opinion on the situation with Sony going forward, and just the fact that I feel like people are really overreacting to Sony. So the thing is, there's been a lot of talk about Sony and like only caring about big games. First of all, I don't think that's true per se, and the reason I say that is because we've seen a lot of marketing trailers and whatnot for Kenya Bridge of Spirits, which is a independent developer, so it's a smaller studio, not a AAA game, and it's already been said the game's gonna be short. It's only a $40 game instead of like your 70 that you typically are paying now for AAA Sony games, and the game looks absolutely fantastic. And there's been a lot of marketing behind that. Then you've also had things like Sackboy, again, even though Little Big Planet you could say is an established franchise, and it's kind of building off of that in a sense. It's not, a huge game that's gonna get any sort of like game of the year contention type of thing. And it's not going to sell like 15, 20 million or anything crazy like that. So I don't think that that's true necessarily, that Sony is not caring about independent developers and smaller games. I just don't. And then in terms of Sony and exclusives, I think we're still going to see a lot of great exclusives. And I think Sony is already set up for the next few years in a sense, because I've been hearing people talk about PlayStation 4 and 5 here and how a lot of cross-gen games, but you have to remember it's the beginning of the gen. Almost pretty much every time there's a new gen starting, that's what you get is a lot of cross-gen games. It usually takes about 18 months or so to really start getting good games. And on top of that, we still have COVID going on, which, studios are having to work from home. That's likely slowing down production for games by anywhere between 6 to 12 months, I would guess, depending on kind of the size of the game and whatnot. And some studios, it might affect more than others for whatever reason, but that's still a big thing. And I think if you take that away, we likely would have had a first year that looks more like you typically see for a console in its first like 2 years. And even so, I'd still say things are looking kind of better than typical for the first year or so, because I know we haven't had a true PlayStation 5 exclusive in a sense, because everything's either been cross-gen or it's been something like Demon Souls, which is a remake. But we got Returnal coming up here next week. I'm not personally interested in that game, but I do think it'll do well. I don't think it's going to do game busters in terms of reception or sales, but I do think it'll do pretty well. I'm guessing it's going to be like an 82 or something on Metacritic, and I think it'll be a success. Just not, like I said, a game of the year type of game. But not every game's going to be a game of the year type, and so you got to remember that. But then you have Ratchet and Clank 2, which is only about a month and a half away, which I cannot wait for. A big Ratchet and Clank fan, Insomniac fan in general. Spyware games were fun back in the day. The Spider-Man games they've made so far have been great, the two. But with Ratchet and Clank, I think that's going to be big, because it looks like it's going to be one of the first games, maybe with Returnal as well. It really shows off what the PS5 can do. And then there's been a lot of talk about Horizon Forbidden West. If it's going to get delayed, or is it not going to get delayed? I personally think that Horizon Forbidden West will still make this year as like a November game. So if you have Returnal, Ratchet and Clank, and Horizon Forbidden West this year, then that means that 2021 is basically in good shape for exclusives. And then you still have like the games, like I said, with like Returnal, or not Returnal, like I said, with Kenya Bridge of Spirits and such. So yeah, I think PlayStation 5 for 2021 is going to be in good shape in terms of games. I know people still having issues getting the console, but even in a normal gen with Sony especially, it's typically hard to get their console from launch until probably about April. And we're in April right now. So in that regard, we're not too far past that. And again, you have to remember, we are still going through COVID, and there's been chip shortages for the system. So you can't really blame it on Sony. They've actually are selling consoles pretty fast, but they're not able to keep up with demand. You have to remember a couple things. Like I said, going through COVID, chip shortages, excuse me. Because of that, you have to remember that some factories had to close completely, perhaps, last year, and then even though things are opening up, we're still not 100% normal. You still have some places that either are closed or are open, but they're having some sort of restrictions in terms of how many people can be in. And even if it's something like a factory, you have to remember too that we just got out of cold and flu season. So a lot of people were going to have to likely stay at home at times that work in the factories when they probably just have a cold or the flu to make sure they don't have COVID. And I could go on and on about COVID because, yeah, I have some thoughts on that one. But people need to stop watching the news and being basically, I feel like, being lied to about COVID and fear mongering. That's what I think it pretty much is. But try not to get too much into that. But yes, then you look at anyway. So that's an issue as well. The fact that they can't make the consoles as fast as normal as they normally could because of COVID, and then also the fact that you have more people at home, even though that's gotten better, but it's still an issue where some people are having to stay at home because of it. And so, gaming is up. More people are gaming because of the fact they can't go to the movies or go out to dinner, or, they just have more, spare time in general because they're not having to, work or whatnot, sort of thing. So that's a factor too. But anyway, like I said, Returnal, Ratchet and Clank, and Horizon this year. Then you look at 2022, we pretty much know Gran Turismo 7, God of War, the next God of War. We don't know yet if it's going to be delayed till next year, but it's pretty much a guarantee at this point, I'd say, considering that we're, getting towards May, and we have still only seen a teaser, and a teaser, very brief teaser too, like definition of a teaser, just saw a logo, no gameplay, no trailer, as well as the creator of God of War basically saying the game will be ready when it's ready. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be pushed to 2022. If that happens, you have God of War, next God of War, and you got Gran Turismo 7 for 2022, which those two games I'd say would pretty much put 2022 covered. Because if you have, I think, two big exclusives in a year, you're in pretty good shape. And we know that Sony's not necessarily, but they're still going to announce some more stuff. There could be games that we don't know about that are going to be 2022 or 2023 that are big. And then that kind of leads. So 2021, 2022 should be covered. 2023, I think we could see Ratchet and Clank, or not Ratchet and Clank, sorry. I think we could see Spider-Man 2, the full-fledged sequel in 2023. I even think it could be 2022. But I could see it being 2023, and then that would already give you one big game for 2023. And then you look at the fact that Naughty Dog, it sounds like, is doing a Last of Us 2 or Last of Us 1 remake. It's what it sounds like. Haven't gotten confirmed on that, but a lot of speculation, and there was an article written about some Sony stuff with that. But yeah, chances are, even if they are doing that they got another team working on something else. You also have the fact that we have the Santa Monica Studios, who makes God of War, is also working on a new IP, it sounds like. So you could very well have, like a new IP from them, say by 2024 or something. So I feel like we're pretty covered for 2021, 2022. Then it gets a little more iffy in terms of what can we expect after 2023. And even though, or 2023 and beyond, but even though we don't know those games, I still think, we're going to definitely have some stuff to look forward to. Because like I said, Ratchet and Clank, we know we're going to get something from Naughty Dog. We know we're going to get, like I said, likely a new IP from Santa Monica. And so some of those games could be 2023, 2024, perhaps. Sucker Punch is likely going to make likely going to make a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima? Considering that just came out last year, though, that was probably not till like 2024 or something, maybe even 2025. Not sure. Then you also have the fact that the second team for Guerrilla Games, the first team is working on Horizon Forbidden West, but there's been a lot of speculation about a second team working on multi-platform or multi-player game or something So perhaps you could see that in like 2023 or something, kind of in between Forbidden West and whatever, and maybe Forbidden West or maybe Horizon 3 if they decide to do a third Horizon game. So I just feel like all that we're in good shape. And then going to Game Pass, there's been a lot of talk about Game Pass and Xbox, and I honestly don't really see that making that big of an impact and really making people want to go away from Sony or anything, because the problem with Game Pass is that, one, I don't know how substantial that is for Microsoft. I don't really see a way that they can really be making that much money off of Game Pass compared to straight up selling games. It just seems like you're probably not making a lot of money, because you have to remember, like, it's different than like a streaming service with, say, Disney Plus or something, because some of those streaming services like Disney Plus, Disney's still getting box office money, not as much because of COVID, but they still are getting box office money, where like Microsoft, with video games, you're not getting like a box office money. And if you're going to start doing this Game Pass thing and keep building it and building it, you're probably going to have less and less people buying games for full price, which is actually going to kind of hurt, I think, the bottom line overall. So I don't know how sustainable that is. And the fact that I would say pretty much everything you can play that's actually worth playing on Xbox, I think, is on Sony. You can buy on Sony. Xbox exclusives suck. They have, I literally from day one, even going back to the original Xbox, and it's gotten worse and worse, honestly. And yeah, I know they bought some studios, but history tells us that their games suck. And so until they come out with some good exclusives, I'm not going to believe that they're going to come out with good ones, even just, because they bought some studios. Got to prove to me that those studios are actually going to provide good games. Because, like I said, I just feel like Xbox doesn't make good games. They have called the Xbox basically, since their history, has lived on three things: Gears of War, Halo, and Forza. Now, the thing is, Halo, from what I've heard, a lot of people have been kind of disappointed in the last few or so. When they showed Halo, the new Halo, for the first time, it didn't look that good. It looked like something you should see on like Xbox 360 or something graphically. And I personally think shooting games are so overrated. I feel like all first-person shooter games basically play the same. And the fact that you're talking about those three franchises and they don't really do anything else, where Sony's always pumping out like new IPs. Last year or last gen, for example, you got Horizon, new IP. You got Ghost of Tsushima, new IP. Spider-Man's not a new IP, but we hadn't had a good Spider-Man game in a long time, so that was big. So stuff like that. And the fact that we're already hearing that the creator of God of War is likely making a new IP after the next God of War, or that they might even have a second team working on that already or whatnot. So I feel like the combination of Sony having the next few years already set up pretty well, the fact that I don't really see how Xbox can sustain itself with Game Pass, and last gen PlayStation, if you look at PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PlayStation 4 has sold around 120 million units now. Xbox One is sold only around 50, 55, something like that. So you're talking about over a 2-to-1 ratio. I feel like Xbox made a lot of people mad last gen, to the point where I honestly think this gen's going to be even worse. I honestly see Sony outselling them like 3-1, maybe even 4-1 this gen. And yeah, Sony's not perfect, but I do think a lot of these issues people are talking about are being overblown. Now, the other thing is, when it comes to like Game Pass, and people talk about PlayStation Now, because PlayStation Now you can stream games, but there's not like day and day thing where the game comes out and it's on the streaming service the same day as like the release of the game if you buy it. But again, I don't think that's something Sony would do, because it would cost them too much money if people aren't buying these $70 games now and instead are just paying for the streaming service. Because if you're streaming, because it is a good deal for the consumer in a sense, because if you're streaming and I'm not sure how much Game Pass is, but I know it's enough that, or cheap enough that if you're doing it for, say, the full year, and you're not buying games, but instead you're doing that, you're going to be spending less money than if you're buying games, even if it's only a couple games a year. So you could say for the consumer in that regard that it's good. But the one thing so like I said, though, for Sony, I don't think they would do it. Cost them too much money. Now, the one thing I think Sony could perhaps do with PlayStation Now is some people get confused with PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Plus basically you pay to play online. Personally, too, I hate the fact you have to pay to play online. I don't really play online games, though, but I just think it's stupid. I think playing online should be free, I think, like it was during the PlayStation 3 gen. But, I mean, even Nintendo charges, even though they're the cheapest. But I know a lot of people want to disagree about that, about that streaming should be, or that play online should be free. But what I could see them doing is combining PlayStation Now, where you stream, and PlayStation Plus. I could see them combining in a sense where maybe if you do both, they're both like $9.99 a month if you're paying by month. So you're basically paying $19.98 or basically $20 a month if you're paying for both and you're doing the monthly rate. What I could see them doing is maybe doing something where if you get both, you're paying less. Maybe instead of, if you're doing both, instead of paying 20, maybe now instead you only have to pay 15 if you do both. But if you do, the individual, you're still paying the 10 sort of thing. So I could see something like that. Kind of like how, in general, if you pay for 6 months or whatever compared to a month, you're paying less per month, even though you're paying more overall. Kind of like that thing, or even like dating sites, it's kind of the same thing. Where you're paying if you pay for like a year, you're paying more overall, but you're paying less per month than if you only pay for one. Or Disney Plus, the same thing. You can pay for a month, or you can pay for like a year. So that kind of thing. I could see Sony doing something like that. Other than that, though, I'm not really sure what else people can honestly expect from Sony when it comes to streaming and kind of trying to compete with Game Pass in a sense. I don't feel like they really need to either. So yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, and it's something that does worry me a little bit, but at the same time, it's something that only came out recently, and it's hard to really say because we don't know all the details on it. But basically, it sounds like PlayStation 3, 4, and 5 all have some sort of battery. I never even really knew if they had like a battery in them per se. But apparently they have some sort of battery, which if the battery dies, apparently you can't play anything on it. The system becomes a brick. Can't play even games that you have on a disc. And so that does sound pretty sucky. I don't know if Xbox is like that or not. Hasn't been said. But the thing about that, though, and why I said kind of need more questions is, one, I don't know how long those batteries and those systems, tend to last. Like, are the batteries something where, they're going to die in 10 years, or is it something where you're likely going to have the battery die on you, 30 years from now or 40 years from now? Like, how long those batteries last? I have a PlayStation 3. I had a PlayStation 3. I'm trying to think. PlayStation 3 came out in 2006. I got a PlayStation 3 in 2007 after it had its first price cut. Got the Alive Death in 2019 after only having it for about 2 years, maybe early 2010, somewhere around there. Got the Slim then. Still have my Slim. So I've had my Slim for 11 years or so. Haven't had an issue with the console, and the battery or whatever. The one issue I do have with my PlayStation 3 is now sometimes the USB ports and the controllers don't want to charge. I don't know if it's the controllers myself and maybe the batteries in my controllers have died, or if it's like the USB port and the system itself going out. The only way I'd really know would be if I were to test trying to charge my controllers, I guess, on another PS3 or something, or if I bought a new PS3 controller and see if it charges without having an issue, although it might be hard to find PS3 controllers now, being that the system's kind of old in a sense. But yeah, so I don't know how long those batteries last in the systems, as well as if they do die, how easy is it to like get a replacement battery? Like, can you find them pretty easily on Amazon or, whatnot? How much do they cost? And I wouldn't think cost would be too much of an issue, though. But then how easy is it to actually replace the battery? I'm not a tech person either, so if it's not something simple and I have that issue, then yeah, it would be annoying. But yeah, it's just kind of my overall thoughts on like Game Pass, PlayStation's lineup. The fact that I don't necessarily buy that they're only caring about big games. I feel like Sony's still in a pretty good place with PlayStation 5 so far and what's to come. And I also feel like a lot of people, when we get to E3, I know Sony's not going to E3, but we'll likely get like a big state of play or something from Sony, either like a week before E3 or the week of or the week after or something like that. And I believe that a lot of people, once we get to E3 and Sony announces a few things, will shut up. Personally, I think when people see more of Horizon Forbidden West, and when we see the first like actual trailer / gameplay of God of War, which I think we'll get both of those at E3. Even if God of War is a 2022 game, I still think we'll get real trailer, at least, even if we don't get gameplay. But I feel like when we get those two, as well as perhaps a few other game announcements of games we don't know, I think a lot of people will be much more satisfied than they are right now and will not be so negative. And in terms of E3, besides those two things, I'm wondering if we might get Silent Hill announced, because there's been a lot of rumors about Silent Hill exclusive to the point where I'm starting to think it's true. So I wonder about that. I also wonder if we could get confirmed about what, because there's also a second San Diego studio now, a San Diego studio that does not make MLB The Show, that's newer, that they're making something. There's been a lot of rumors for a while now, for a couple of years, about what they're doing. I think ranging from something with space to like a new IP, although a new IP could be in space, to like them doing Uncharted 5. So, I'm wondering if we might get a confirmed idea or announcement, I should say, of what the second San Diego studio is doing. And, whether it's Uncharted 5 or a new IP or whatever, I'm wondering if we might get that at E3, so that way people will know and they can stop kind of speculating on what this team is doing. And because the thing with this studio, too, is that we really have no idea with this studio how long they've been working on whatever it is they're working. We don't know if they've been working on whatever they're working on for a year, or if it's been like 2 years, 3 years. Like we don't really know. So it's hard to say if we'll get any sort of announcement on what they're working on, because we don't know how far in development it is, and if it's far enough to really be able to show, or if it's such early process of development that they can't show anything. So yeah, a lot of interesting things, but that's just kind of my overall thoughts about all the negativity towards Sony. And I feel like people just need to chill, wait till E3. We'll get some good announcements there. Biggest thing I would worry about, though, like I said, I'd say is the battery issue for PS3, 4, and 5. Because if your console, if the battery dies or whatever, and you can't find a battery, or it's hard to find or whatever, that could definitely be an issue. Because one thing, I personally have always been someone that likes to play games physically, because I have always said if you get a game digitally, you don't truly own it, because like if the network goes down or they stop or whatever with the store, then, and your system breaks or whatever, then there's like really no way to get that game back, I guess. Where with a disc, just put the disc in, you can play forever. But if the system has to have that battery to basically operate anything, then yeah, that's an issue. So yeah, it would be interesting if Sony will at some point comment on that. It's also been real quick talk about with Sony about backwards compatibility. It would be nice to have backwards compatibility, because simply, it's nice to be able to still play old games and not have to take up as much space. Because, if you're someone that has, played video games for a while and went through a lot of consoles and whatever and whatnot, eventually, it takes up a lot of space. And then you add on top of that things like, sound bar, cable box, stuff like that. Like you can have a lot plugged in a TV. Like me personally, I have like 9 things plugged in my TV at once. Some of it's stuff I don't play that often, but I still like to have it because I do play it here and there, and I don't want to have to plug it in and get it out of like the closet or something when I feel the urge to play. So it's nice to be able to have less of that, have to be able to play. Like with Sony, if you had a PlayStation 1 and 2 or 3 and a 4 and a 5 or whatever, you want to play the 1 through 4 games or whatever, it'd be nice to only have to have one console plugged in instead of 5. For HDMI inputs and all that kind of stuff, power cords and whatnot. So it would be nice. I personally would like PlayStation 3 is the biggest one for me. I never actually owned a PlayStation 1 and 2. So PlayStation 3 is the one I'd like to see the most in terms of backwards compatibility. I do feel like Sony could easily do backwards compatibility for 1 and 2 because from what I've heard, it's pretty easy to do them on PC with I can't remember what it's called, but it sounds like it's something that's pretty easy to do. But I kind of wonder if Sony would do backwards compatibility. I feel like people want it and people will be happy if Sony did, but at the same time, I kind of feel like if you have backwards compatibility, then who's going to use PlayStation now is what I kind of feel like as well. If you have backwards compatibility, I feel like a lot less people would use PlayStation now. And so in a sense, I think it would be costing Sony income because why pay for a service that streams if you can actually just simply play those games? At the same time, I never understood why you would pay for a streaming service to stream games that you basically can play on your old consoles in the first place. That just seems silly to me. But I don't know. I feel like I said, I feel like Sony could do 1 and 2. 3, I'm not sure because of the cell chip, but we'll see. Maybe Sony will do 1, and I could see Sony perhaps doing 1, 2, 4, all backwards compatibility because we do have 4 already. But I don't know. Don't think 3 will happen. 1, 2, maybe. If that does happen, maybe we could get an announcement at E3 of that too. I feel like that would be a big announcement. I also, at the same time, though, I kind of feel like if 1, 2, and 3 were all going to happen for backwards compatibility, I feel like we would have either got that at launch, or I feel like we would have had at launch an announcement of we're working on 1 through 3. It'll come in a year, or it'll come later, but we are working on it, or something like that. Acknowledgement of it, rather than just letting people hang back and wondering because of patents that have come out that kind of relate to backwards compatibility. But that's basically all my thoughts. I'm going to end the stream here. 28 minutes. Talked a little longer than I was planning. But as always, thanks for watching. Comments below. Subscribe if you like the video. Later.